Wonderful. Well, it's
Yes.
great to have you all here. Thank you for the introduction, David. I'll go ahead and share my screen so we have a little bit of an outline of what we are doing together. But I would very much like it to be a interactive, conversational, and more discussion type of thing instead of a, lecture type of thing. So if you have any questions, any comments in the middle, please feel free to put them in the chat or put them in, just unmute yourself and ask the question. I will not, that's not something that I get derailed by, so it's okay. So you can, feel free to ask questions. So, when we were initially discussing about what this session should be, I thought about one of the challenging things that I have done in my teaching online, in the teaching online space. And so we thought about this transition from synchronous to asynchronous. So that's what I'll be talking about today. So I'll share with you a little bit of, what I have done, what I was trying to do, and what I ended up doing. So my name is Vandana Singh. I'm a professor and program director at this brand new college. Maybe you've heard about it, the College of Emerging and Collaborative Studies. Before this, I've been at UT for 15 years. I was a professor in School of Information Sciences in the College of Communication and Information for 15 years. And so for 15 years, I've been teaching in a nationally ranked online program. So School of Information Sciences has a master's program in information sciences, which has been online for a really long time. And I've been teaching in it since I joined UT, which was in 2008. So, 2 courses per semester online. That's kind of what my experience is. So I will talk a little bit about the online teaching, just a general as concept, and what are the things that are kind of out there about that. And then try to, create this discussion about the distinction between synchronous and asynchronous. If you have heard, across campus or anywhere else, when people say online learning, they could mean anything. They could mean any number of different things, right? So it's very important to understand what someone else is, when they say online learning, what they mean versus what you mean, or what your experiences are. And it is really a range. So we'll talk a little bit about this distinction of what makes these things different. And then I will talk about what my concerns were when I was asked to teach an asynchronous online course. My experience has been in synchronous setting forever. And so this was, I'll talk about what my hesitations were, what my concerns were, and what I was really, really considering before I actually launched into that. And then I'll share my course site, my approach, and then I'm just looking at the chat. So just, what the results of that were, what the experiences of the students were, what my experiences were, and what I thought, I learned from it and how I would do it differently. So with that, if I ask you, I think I've already kind of preemptively set the stage for it, but if I ask you what is online learning, what would you say it is? How would you define it? What is your definition of online learning? And you can unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat. Okay, I don't see any responses. Well, if you're being shy, that's okay, because it's really not easy to define. It's okay. It's completely okay to be shy, because this is exactly what the question is. It's not easy to define. Learning through a medium, yeah, you could put it generally like that. So, one of the research projects when I started, what is online learning? So that's what led to this article that David was just talking about. And voila, the article is cited the most in the history of American Journal of Distance Education in just 3 years, because everybody wants to know how to define online learning. So this was the title of the article. How many ways can we define online learning? A systematic literature review of definitions of online learning. Exactly, Michelle, right? So we think because, yeah, so if you're talking to a vendor, it's all about the technology. That's all they'll focus on. And you can build as beautiful toys as you want. If the users don't get it, it's not going to work. So it's really a lot of different things that have to work for an online class to work. So this is, I know, very text heavy, so I apologize for that, but this is the results of that article. We collected 46 definitions of what online learning is from 37 different resources. We took all those definitions, we conducted content analysis on these definitions, and we said, okay, what are the things that are evolving? The reason I started that project is I wanted to understand the concept, but I was very interested in the evolution of the term. Like, when it first started, what it meant versus when we talk about it today, and then in pandemic, what it meant, right? Like it's just a whole evolution of this term. So we, that was the objective. And so we did content analysis on the definitions of online learning. We saw what are the things that are same across all the definitions, and what are the variable things across definitions? What do people definitely mean when they say, and what are kind of the gray areas? And also how it evolved over a period of time from, correspondence courses or whatever it was, like how did it evolve to now talking about machine learning? How do we add generative AI or chat GPT into your online learning sessions? So that's the evolution of it, which I think would be fascinating to do this again in maybe a decade and see, how it has changed. So that's kind of where I'm coming from is, understanding that this is a concept that evolves. It is our understanding of it evolves. Things we were doing 15 years ago, we are not doing them now. Some of them we're keeping very close to us because we know they worked. And I also have to let you know, I'm dealing with a really bad cough. So I'm sorry in advance for coughing here, but so these are when we start talking about online learning and we convert it to online teaching angle, we start thinking about how do we teach it. So these are the two ways. Synchronous, it is coughing season. Yes, thank you, Jimmy. So, they're the synchronous and asynchronous. And again, synchronous and asynchronous can have various elements to them as well, like what we mean by synchronous. So when I'm talking about synchronous is when I'm like this is a synchronous session. This is a session, if I was replicating this in a classroom, that I would call a synchronous teaching session, where students have to log in at the same time as the instructor. They have to be there. They have to be, communicating with the instructor in real time. So in a way, we are trying to replicate the in-person classroom, how we used to be at the same time in-person classroom. And so there are benefits to it, but we're trying to replicate the traditional classroom setting. And then the asynchronous is where you're essentially delivering educational content where instructors can log in whenever they have time, and students can log in whenever they have time. They are learning the content at their on their own speed, but within given time limitations, right? Like weekly or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is. And the course material is presented in a way that the instructor is not right there with the material. Like I'm here with this slide. So in asynchronous, you will have this slide. You might have my voiceover narration over it, but you have the content at your hand. So that's this, that's the key difference when I talk about synchronous versus asynchronous of what I mean. Yes, and so I'm reading Beth's question about how to do valid assessment of learning, particularly since the rise in access of AI. I think that's kind of the key question as an instructor, as a teacher, that you always have to have. And I have taught mostly in graduate courses, like in graduate program. And one of the things that I do, and I've taught required courses and I've taught electives. But one thing that I always have them do to address, what you're saying is at the end of the course, I say, pull up the syllabus and go over it and tell me what you knew about each of the topic when you started the class and what do you know now? And what that does is it helps them appreciate what they have learned, but also it is, I say you're a graduate student spending money on a course, you should know what you learned from it. What was your, what did you take out from this? So I have them do that. I call it a learning summary. And so they have to say, what they learned about each topic. So that, I think, in a way, to me, is a more honest assessment of their learning than what I give them a grade on. So that's my approach. For a small course, yes. Yes, about 30 students top. So in Synchronous, like we said, there's the real-time interaction. There are scheduled sessions. So there's, no flexibility in when you are attending it. That is the time of the class. You log in and you attend the class. You're talking to the instructor right away. If you have questions, like in a traditional setting, you can ask your questions. You can get answers right away. You can have discussions with instructors right away. You're engaging with your peers. I think that is a key element of learning, is engaging with your peers. So in a synchronous session, that is much easier. It is less easier than the in-person, in my opinion, but it's much more easier than the asynchronous. When you are actually, like, for example, you all can see yourself, each other, then there is more likelihood of you being comfortable in asking questions or sharing information. And even in Zoom, like right now, you see all of the chat messages have these thumbs ups or, the reactions that they have. That is right there an example of cohort building, right? There you are all either agreeing with each other or you're interacting in some way with your peers. So that is a really essential part of synchronous learning, which I was very stuck on. Like, I really like that. That is my thing. I think this is the way to teach online. And of course, you can do group activities. So I can right now put you in a breakout group if this was a class, and then you could talk to each other, which I think in learning, like I said, it has to be interactive. It cannot be a broadcast, right? So if I feel the students are happiest in the classes where they talk more, either it be with their peers or it be with their instructor, but they need to talk and they need to share, and then they learn more. And that's, I think, probably also biased because of my experience with graduate education, that graduate students like to do that. And of course, there's the synchronous technologies that are they're helping us, like Zoom, or before Zoom, there was Collaborate. Before Collaborate, there was something else. What was it called? So like 15 years, I've used different synchronous tools that UT has had to deliver, online courses. Centra. Yes, Rosie, thank you. Yes. So there are, yes, so many tools and evolving too, right? One of the exercises I used to give in a class was, what is your ideal online class tool? So, in a UX class, like, design the ideal tool, what would it do? And it was fascinating, all the things that students did. So there can be challenges with, schedules for different time zones. Of course, you need, proper internet connection. So many times, in Tennessee area, we had in class students typing in, there's a storm right here outside my window. If I drop off, please know I'm not leaving the class. So, those are the things that happen in your synchronous classes, but not in your asynchronous. The notorious 2010 hailstorm, big hailstorm, I don't know how many of you remember, in Knoxville. It happened during a class I was teaching, like right during the class. So those are, things of life. Or if, one thing that happened was I was teaching and they were trying to fix something outside and somebody cut the wire. And I was like, what happened? And the students, so then I'm calling someone in the office to email the class. Those things can only happen in a synchronous class. They can't happen if your content is already there. So, there are challenges with that. Yeah, exactly, Jamie, right? We get cut off. So now came the question, and Alexis is here, right? Alexis, you here? Yes, Alexis is here. So Alexis was part of the team that proposed this challenge to me of teaching asynchronous. this was like a bomb for me. Synchronous was my comfort place. I love teaching Synchronous. I like this interaction. And then I'm told, well, now you have to make your course asynchronous. So I was really, really worried that I wanted my students to have a good experience. Then I was also worried because my regular 16-week course had to be taught in a summer in 10 weeks. So the challenge was double. I had to squeeze the content into 10 weeks and make it asynchronous. So it was a big concern. So I got help. I got help from OIT to develop this. Of course, I understand the benefits of doing it asynchronous. That entire program for which I was teaching, the strategic digital communication program, is online. We have professionals from all over taking courses in that. And they need that flexibility. They have jobs, they have families, they have other things going on. So they needed that flexibility to not have to log in at 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. or whatever might be the course time. And so how do we allow access to students who have other things going on or busy life? So that asynchronous option, right, is right there. There is no real-time interaction. So it's really, that's how it is. It's no real-time interaction. I'm never logging in at the same time, which I tweaked a little bit. I'll talk about it later. And essentially what you're doing is you're recording your content. So you're recording all your lectures, you're recording any other kinds of videos, support videos. If you're doing a live tutorial, you're recording that. And I teach technology courses. So I have to do a lot of demos. I have to show them if the code worked or not, if the website changed or not, what they are doing. So all of that live interaction had to be codified into these asynchronous videos. And you have to think about deadlines, right? You have to think about what kind of time frame can you use for deadlines. I didn't have the extended time frame. I had the squished time frame. I had the 10 weeks. So I had to reconceptualize the course. You use tools like discussion boards. So that's very helpful because students are then able to communicate among each other. But if you have read any research of online learning, getting students to participate in discussion boards is a big challenge. How do you create that community where they are comfortable in talking, discussing? Of course, it also places greater emphasis on you doing it by yourself. You're doing it independently because it's giving you that flexibility. Like I can do everything on a Sunday night because that's how my life is allowing me to do this course. So you're not doing it with your other, doing the learning part with your friends. Of course, it eases the scheduling conflict thing. It gives the flexibility. Yes, and Sally is saying, I found that async works okay for upper level students on campus. First and second year students have a harder time. Yeah, and it would be interesting to see if COVID helped us with that, because a lot of these kids had to just pivot immediately to Zoom in their schools. And so that might have improved or changed a little bit. Professor White says that utilize video discussion boards so that I can see and hear students. Yes. Have you integrated Flip into anything? Flip is really cool. It allows you to do less than, you don't like it. I like it for students reacting to each other and creating it. So I used it for one of my classes. Yes. Tech issues with Flipgrid. Yes. And also access issues too, like who has access. You have to think about those things too. And asynchronous allows for this potential for reflection, right? Students have more time to reflect on the content, but sometimes I think that more time means that they actually never get back to the content too, it's both ways. So this was kind of my, dilemma into going, okay, asynchronous versus synchronous. I think synchronous is good for some types of courses, but sometimes we need to do asynchronous. So how do we do? It requires effective course design. Your content has to be developed specifically for asynchronous courses. Even though it was an online course, but the content for synchronous course doesn't easily translate to asynchronous. Communication has to be very clear. You have to tell from the very beginning that this is how I'm going to communicate with you. You have to set those things in very much in clear. And your learning material has to be structured in a way that they have access to it in the way they need, which again is a difficult thing because people all have different preferences of how they want to access their content. And so you have to ensure that they can, successfully navigate the course independently. And that really with the vendors or with the tech people, it is really the main thing is the navigation of the course content. So they come up with a lot of different ways in which you can facilitate that navigation. And I'll share my experience of, what that was like for me. So these were my considerations, right? When I was thinking about this transition, is that the content delivery should be great, that there has to be a cohort experience. I think that is key to learning for students. And it is, again, a graduate course that we're talking about. And then I was very, very scared about losing the connection with the instructor. Like I was not comfortable with them not having a relationship with me. Taking a course and not knowing who I am, not knowing that I'm very approachable, not knowing that they can reach out to me, not knowing any of those things. That was the main concern that when I approached OIT, when we met with the OIT, I said, I don't want them to feel like it's just someone in the Canvas recorded something a year ago and then they are here. So there are different things I did to ensure that. And in the 10-week period, I think the second time I taught it, I don't remember, but one of the times I was teaching it in the 10 weeks, I got COVID. And the students were very angry that I was not as responsive then. But at that time, I wasn't opening my laptop, right? So, so there are, pros and cons with making the students expect you to but I wanted to be present. And then I was not, of course, there was a friction there. So we have to manage expectations, I guess, is what I'm saying. So for content delivery, it was 16 weeks to 10 weeks. So one of the things I knew early on is weekly milestones are not going to work because weekly, if they miss 1 week, they are going to be lagging behind. So they had to have some kind of divide in the week, maybe daily, maybe 3 times, after 3 days or something like. So I needed to give them these milestones that within this week, first 2 days, you have to have done your reading so that on the 3rd day, you can do the exercise. And on the 5th day, you can respond to others who have done this exercise. So, we have to put these in structure. And then, of course, you want them to have access to lectures, videos, articles, everything that they are going to have. Because anyways, we are accommodating, busy people, busy lives. We have to give them seamless access because there isn't the instructor to say, sure, let me open up Canvas and show you where the file is. It has to be there whenever at 12 a.m. on Sunday night, they choose to work, it should be there. So that was for the content. The cohort experience, so, think about discussion boards, variety of discussion boards with different types of topics, not the boring read and report back type of things, like, read the article and post a summary, not that type of thing. I've also done research on discussion boards as part of one of my NSF grants. So I studied a community of software engineers who develop open source software product in online settings. They essentially use discussion boards and they are onboarding new people. People are learning from each other. And so I was looking at it from the point of view of what makes this a good learning space without an instructor. And one of the things that came out of that research was it was problem solving. There was a problem thrown into it among people, like, this is not working. Everybody started contributing, like, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. So that I always keep that in mind when I'm thinking about discussion boards is if you throw a problem, then they will try to help each other or help. So that's something to kind of also remember is if you throw a problem, there will be more people joining in versus if you say, read your article and report your summary. And then, of course, we added group work. We added peer review of assignments. That seems differences between those who have good online character. like what part is contradicting the problem solving part, Michelle?
No, the whole having them do things on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I mean, I'll show you my course of how it was set up, and I will show you what the results of it was too. So yes, I exactly know what you are saying. So for the connection with me, these are the things that I wanted to make sure is, so OIT helped me make this video of myself, introducing myself, in which I talked a lot more about personal details, who I am, where I'm from, what my hobbies are, how I made my journey to the United States, where all I have lived, my kids, what I like about Tennessee, why I live here. So that has really nothing to do with my course, but it's about me. And the good thing about that is then I can use that intro video in different classes because it's not about the course. It's just really about me. And so that introduction works. And I share stories during the lectures too, recorded lectures. Another thing that I did is this weekly check-ins. So even though it was an asynchronous course, I put in optional weekly check-ins. And I said, you don't have to be there, nothing will happen. There's nothing important going to be covered there, which you won't get otherwise. So there will be this time, I'll be online on Zoom for this 1 hour. Anybody who wants to come in can come in. And so that was my way of maintaining, like, for people to not feel like they didn't have anybody to reach out to or to talk to in a live session. So that was my synchronous, like, I couldn't do it without it. And then another thing is, of course, we have to do the recorded content, but what I really liked doing was responsive recorded content. So even though I had like lectures divided in the, or recorded, but when they asked a question, if they struggled in an assignment, then I made a reactive video to that. And I said, so I saw, 5 of you did this and 3 of you did this. This is how you could. So then they knew I was paying attention to what they're doing. And in the same week, responding to them. So I was recording my generalized feedback on different things to them in responsive recorded content, sometimes even just going through the assignment description. If there was a part that many people had questions about, then I'll just quickly do a 5-minute video. That wasn't even too much, just like 5 minutes Zoom quick video. And then of course that part about availability, that even if you're sick, you have to be available. With the asynchronous, that's kind of the expectation, is that the instructor is going to be available no matter what. And that's pretty big for students too. I'm reading the comments. It depends on the content of the course. Is it hard skills or soft skills? Exactly. I've been experimenting with Best Buy due dates. So there's a suggested time frame to help maximize learning, but it is still fair. Yes. Another thing I learned at one of the conferences on online learning was this idea of if needed days. So in the syllabus, I say there's like 4 days that are if needed days, and you can take those days if you need in one assignment, or you can take them over 4 assignments, but you don't have to ask my permission. You just have to write on top of the assignment that I'm using my one if needed day for this assignment submission. And it doesn't make much of a difference to me, but they really like that flexibility. They appreciate this. Like if there is something that really comes up, then they have 1 extra day to work on it. And I don't think too many use it, but I know all of them feel relaxed because of it. That, oh, okay, I can still make it. So with that, I'll just show you my course that I developed with OIT's help, that was for completely asynchronous. And this was the first iteration of this course, which I taught in summer 2021. And then I taught a second iteration of this course in summer 2022. So what I took from here, I could apply that in the second. So, this will have Michelle's point here too. So this is what the course site looked like. This is the video that was about me, which was again not at all related to the course, so general. And then just for access, all the modules were linked from here. I use announcements a lot for that course. So that was another way of kind of not too much. I've also seen too much use of announcements, but something like, lecture is uploaded or this is available. For the syllabus, I used because it was a web design course, so it had to be, a good on design. So, I used pictography or something like that to create course outline, course learning outcomes, what the grading would look like, what the assignments were, which learning outcome were each of the assignment addressing, and then what the topics were from which week to which week, because this really was an important way. It was because of this that I pivoted towards the visual depiction instead of my Word document syllabus, because I really wanted them to pay attention how quickly we were moving through content in the 10 weeks. And so this was their entire, June 1 to July 30th, 8 weeks, essentially, not even 10. And then just something. And then, of course, there was the detailed version available on the site. So this was a pictorial. Now, this is what the modules were, and this is what they helped me with. So first thing I'll say is there's the standard information there. This is what I mean by like the weekly, like the kind of stop points, like by Tuesday, try to get this done. By Thursday, try to get this done. By Sunday, post this. So this is another way of, again, breaking down that week into smaller chunks, giving them smaller deadlines. And these are not really deadlines, because if they don't read it on Tuesday, I won't know that, right? There's no way for me to know it. But if somebody needs guidelines on how to pace themselves in the week, then this is a suggestion for that. So I like that. I like breaking it like that. And this is how pretty much all of these were, activities, and they were organized like this. And then there was images that they helped me develop, again, making more like presence felt. This is me kind of just walking through the syllabus on the first one, like what are the things in the syllabus, what are the things that we did. And then another tool I used is in the middle of the video, I would say, right now, answer this, and then they would answer something in the comments at that time mark. Then it was, I don't know if everybody uses it by default. I did not use these aspects of putting like, breadcrumbs across the site. In this we did. So if you go back to modules, you'll see, we had different things, resources, help. I always create something called a web cafe. And I say, I'm not going to look into this discussion board ever. So you can post here whatever you want, concerts, information, favorite songs, whatever. It doesn't matter to me as long as you are talking. Sometimes it's a busy space, sometimes it's not. It just depends on the class. For each of these, when I worked with OIT, we integrated this complete all items. So what this is successive release of content. I don't know how many of you use it, but I did not use it in my graduate courses. I know in undergraduate courses, it's used a lot. And so this was one of those things which they said, so essentially they cannot get to the next piece until they have finished the first piece. So it's increasing, but it also requires them to have finished part one. And if the part one is something like post your introduction, then if they have not posted the introduction, it will not open the next module for them. So there is no way for them to review the content without doing the content, which it was the suggestion for that. But in my opinion, based on the feedback, this did not work. The students wanted to be able to see all the assignments and all the courses without having to do them. So this incremental release was in a way detrimental to the seamless access. It was stopping them. It wasn't letting them view everything, which I don't know if it's a graduate student thing or an undergraduate student thing, but they wanted to see everything beforehand, more detailed than it was in the syllabus. And so this led to a lot of frustration for a lot of students. They did not like that. So I think so, yes. So this was one thing that I then realized is that that's true what they want and what leads to, but it was frustrating, and especially because it's asynchronous. So then they were like, well, Dr. Singh, I wasn't able to access it. And then Dr. Singh is also not right there with them, right? So they have to find a way. So in the future courses, I did remove that. I did not do it incremental like that, especially like, basic things, but I did not make it for anything required that they had to finish it. They can review it on their own pace. That's what worked for my students. That was one of the biggest things that they didn't like, which it made sense. But I did keep this, the pacing guidelines. I did keep this. Now it was not, again, a requirement. In some, no, they don't do it out of order. They're just curious, and also not just curious, actually planning for life. Like there was 4th of July. So they wanted to know if they can't work on 4th of July for 3 days, then what is it that they should be submitting beforehand? So they need to just know and plan. And so, in my opinion, it does work better if you give them access to the content instead of putting conditions on access to content, which again might be different for undergraduate students. Discussions were actually pretty active. There was a lot of questions, lots of things, but also because they were asked to share things and they were asked to use, respond to their peers' videos. And then I used Studio for all the recordings. Another big thing so when I teach these courses in a synchronous format, it's the 3-hour course. So we do hour 15 minutes, and then we take a break, and then we do our 15 minutes of activities. Usually that's how I divide it. But for this, the one big difference in delivering the lecture was all these were they were around 20 minutes. So 20 minutes capsules of recorded videos so that they didn't have to commit to an hour or 3 hours, but they could take one topic. And so you have to, if you're teaching, this, you have to divide the content discretely into smaller packages, like 20-minute packages. Or even you can see some of my reaction videos, like it's a Q&A, is, 5 minutes. It's just what I saw, what I wanted to get back to them. And then another thing that I did along with this is that optional check-in that I had said, those optional check-ins, I always recorded them. Even if there was like one student and they had some question, of course, I let the student know that I'm recording this. But I recorded those. And that was another thing that students, I think, liked, because it allowed them to then also see me even though they didn't have the time to attend this optional check-in, but they saw me in real time interaction with someone else. And so those were, I think some of the things that worked for this. At the middle school and high school level, students get frustrated with incremental release of materials because they want to plan. And if they have trouble accessing or completing one assignment, they want to use their allotted study time to complete something else. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the same thing with these two. So I don't do the locking thing anymore. And I changed, so I changed all this, that they don't have to complete this. I changed how it was released. Course content was, again, like I said, in smaller chunks. And then there were readings for everything. There were infographics, a lot of infographics used. And then there were all the workshops. So here you can see an example of when they're responding in real time. So I ask a question in the middle of the lecture and then say, so for example, how do you define it? And then they do it right at the minute, And so, different risk. So I liked doing that, but I also really liked the responsive videos. I think that was another kind of a good technique to work from. So what were some of the results or student experiences that I saw? Seamlessness, like I said, was an issue. You know, I was hoping to have it seamless, but because of that, it was like a car that keeps braking, right? So I could see that that wasn't very good. There were interface problems. So in the first class or first week, some students didn't find that little next button that I clicked on, right? I showed you all. They didn't see it. And so I then recorded a video saying, this is where you click it. Because again, that was probably not something they were using in other classes. So there were issues with very little things of the interface that are not always obvious to students. Of course, we go crazy when we're creating it because we want it to be, you know, beautiful and this and that. But again, creating videos with pointed out things is helpful, even if we think it's very basic. And of course, this learning style clashed with the incremental release of content, which made access an issue, and that you never want to do that in class, right? You never want to create barriers to access of content. Weekly check-ins were not very popular. Not too many people joined it, but the recording views were very popular. So once I recorded it, everybody wanted to watch it. So it was always those, you know, students you can depend on, those one or two who are always there. If I'm 1 minute late, they're emailing me, Dr. Singh, I'm here, where are you? But everybody was watching it, which I really liked, because then again, they get to see real interaction, you know, this is. And the reactive videos are also very well received. Like I said, you know, about assignment or something. If a question was asked 2 or 3 times, then I would just create a video explaining the answer to it. Group work, of course, is always a challenge, but when asynchronous, students show up with this mindset that they will not be expected to follow any time, like any specific given timelines. But in group work, for them to work together, they had to say, you have to show up on Sunday at 10 or whatever, you know, time they decided for their meetings. And that was not always something that either they expected or, you know, that went always seamlessly. Of course, there's the challenges with who does more and who does less. They have to do a project collaboratively, and, you know, one person knows more and they just take it and do it. So then eventually I started adding them, like everyone has to create 3 lines of code so that you can do this, or, you know, or I also created some optional exercises, and I call them practice exercises. So if you have a really terrific web designer and he wants to do everything, you get to practice it here so that you also learn the skill because you also took the class. So, you know, giving them those opportunities. I think creating the asynchronous course is more work for the instructor. I took like months working with the OIT team, but then also in responding to the students, in managing Canvas, in any real issue, like real-time issues that happen. So that's kind of, you know, my experiences of taking one course from synchronous to asynchronous. I taught it, and again, asynchronous. And then I'm also still teaching, you know, synchronously classes. So yeah, masters in online work, definitely you need all the skills, which I think should be a way to document that in the resume, because it's a real life skill you are learning, right? So you can benefit from it. This was great. I think we should, you know, attend all these sessions and learn from each other. It's the perfect way to keep moving.